Hello, everybody, and welcome or welcome back to the second shelf and to another recent reads on Sundays. Yes, I'm back in the groove, second in a row. That's what I call back in the groove. But before I talk about the books that I've read recently or am reading now, just two public service announcements. First of all, there will be no tops and flops of May. I will do mid-year freak out kind of tops and flops end of June, and there was not enough substance in my May reading to do another tops and flops. So sorry about that, but there will be the half year looking back tops and flops, or however you want to call it, end of this month. And the other thing is my 12 classics that I'm reading. If you follow my channel, you know that I pick 12 classics that I want to read this year. And I pick one each month, obviously 12. And then I talk about it towards the end of the month, around the 28th. And I didn't do that in May. So some of you asked questions. Did I miss the pick for June? No, you didn't. I'm just late. So there will be the review of the May book, Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl by Harriet N. Jacobs, will be up next Wednesday, which is I think the 7th or 8th or something, June. So really late. I'm sorry about that. And then I will also pick the book for June. It's, because I took a break, everything kind of got messed up a little bit. So anyway, on to the recent reads. There are 3 books that I've finished that I want to talk about. The first one I only want to talk about briefly, and that is this letter collection by One Art by Elizabeth Bishop, edited by Robert Giroux, published in 1995. I'm not going to talk long about this book because I talked about it already quite extensively in previous videos. It is what it says on the tin. It's a letter collection. Elizabeth Bishop, poet, US-American poet, beginning of the 20th century. And among all her thousands and thousands of letters, Robert Giroux selected these, and it starts really with her college years and goes all the way up almost to her death. I think the last letter is just a day before she died in the 1970s, quite unexpectedly, by the way. I thought this was brilliant. I love letters and memoirs and diaries. It was the pick, by the way, by Steve Donahue's book club for May. It was his May pick, and it is on my 1001 list, together with her poetry, because the poetry was originally on the list. So I also read her poetry, which was a real discovery for me. I hadn't read any of Bishop's poems before, and I ordered her the collected poems. She published about 100 because it took her really, really long time to finish a poem. She was kind of a perfectionist. But yes, I loved it, and it really made me discover this artist, and I want to read a biography. I want to read all of her poems. So this was excellent. The next book I read was for Kim's book club, the Blind Eye Book Club, where Kim from Middle, she picks a book I'm not really making sense here, like one sentence, starting and then finishing that sentence all the way to the end. Kim of Middle of the Book March. That's first what I wanted to say. And she has a book club where she picks a book each month from her shelves that has been lingering on her shelves for quite a long time. And I drop in and out of the book club, so to speak, because not all the books I want to read, or some I have read, but her pick for May was this one, The Namesake by Jhumpa Lahiri, published in the early 2000s, I think. Is that right? Yes, 2003. It was her second book after the melodies. And Jhumpa Lahiri is not an author that I gravitate towards. I read a couple of her work, but it's just not. It's somehow we don't really fit that well as a reader and a writer, and this was no different. I have to say, Jhumpa Lahiri herself, not in this edition, but in another edition, she talked about this book retrospectively after 10 years later or 15 years later, that she might not publish it now, and certainly not the way she had written it. Anyway, the book is about the immigrant experience. She takes a family from India, from Bengali, a young wife and her husband who immigrate to the US. The man is working as a researcher at MIT, and the wife is a homemaker. And then their children, especially their firstborn son, who is named Gogol, for various reasons that will be explained in the book. And then we follow, there's a sister coming, also Sonia, a couple of years later, and then we follow the story of this family mainly through the eyes of Gogol. There's a switch in perspectives now and again, but Gogol is kind of the red thread through the book. And it was fine, but it just the characters never really grabbed me as being alive. It was kind of generic, what you expect from the immigrant experience. And for some reason, it just kind of, meandered on, and then it stopped, and, people fell in love and out of love and divorce, and some people died, and it's that's, that sounds kind of awful the way I describe it. It's not a bad book, but it was just not really, the people never came to life. I'm just repeating what I said earlier. That is the main takeaway, unfortunately, from this book. So it was not, and everybody in the book group also agreed on it. So, and even Jhumpa Lahiri said she wouldn't have published the book in this this way. So it's probably not her best work. And the same, unfortunately, is also true for another 1001 book pick. So the 1001 books that I want to read by women that I want to read before I die. I will leave a link to the Goodreads shelf down below, and also the stats as of now, beginning of June. And I read this with Sandy from Ms. Reads a Lot, because she also does a 1001 challenge. We have different lists, but they overlap. And this was a book that we both had on our list, Blaming by Elizabeth Taylor. I don't know, but the design of this, but that's another story. And this was published in 1976, actually posthumously. Taylor died in 1975. And she was already gravely ill when she wrote the book. So she might not have been at the top of her, craft, because this book shows a really, really good writer. It's the story about an American couple, Amy and Nick, who are on a cruise, and one of the stops is Istanbul, and then they meet an American expatriate, so to speak. It's an English woman, but living in the US, quite a bit younger, Martha. And Martha kind of wiggles her way into the lives of this couple. She forces the friendship, and then tragedy strikes. And the rest of the book, as Sandy already said in her video, is dealing with the aftermath of what happened, and how, in particular, Amy and Martha, how they get along or not, what happens in Amy's life and in Martha's life, and the the way the people are described, or not described, the people are shown through dialogue. It's just fantastic. So this is a writer who really knows how to portray people. Also children. There are scenes with Amy's son, James. He has two very young children. One is 4 and the other is 7, 2 girls. And the younger girl, Isabel, she is quite a piece of work and very obnoxious. And it's written in such a good way without being condescending towards the child, and also funny. And the way the people are in the little things are shown to us, how they are in the little things, and all the misunderstandings that you are invited by somebody and you just don't want to go, and the other party actually doesn't want to invite you, but they think they are obliged. So that part was really fantastic. But the story just was not top notch for me. It was okay. Again, like the namesake, it was not bad, and certainly not with a writer who has such a command of language and characterization. But the people just didn't really. There are things happening, or people do stuff that I felt were just kind of imposed on them by the author and didn't really make sense to me from within the book. So I want to pick up something else by Elizabeth Taylor. I remember one viewer said she's one of her favorite writers. So if you have a recommendation of her earlier work, I will certainly want to pick this up, and I might then exchange that other book, if I like it better, with this one on the 1001 list. Okay, so these are books that I've finished since last week, and I've also started a couple of books. Let me just check the order in which I wrote them down. Yes, of course. So the first one is a buddy read in real life with a friend of mine who lives in Amsterdam. And we are reading this book together, Katja Hoyer, Beyond the Wall, East Germany, 1949 to 1990. So basically the history of the East German Republic, the DDR, as we call it in German. This book was published earlier this year, and Katja Hoyer was born in East Germany in the 1980s, so before the fall of the wall and before East Germany and West Germany were reunified, which is not a good term actually, because it was not two equal partners and they unified, but East Germany just became part of Germany, which explains a lot when you think about it, of the history. But anyway, so this is the history of the beginning of after the Second World War, how East Germany came to be. And I've read the first two chapters that are actually dealing with the end of the Second World War until 1949. So it's now in the third chapter. It starts with 1949. The chapter before is still in the Second World War. The first two chapters didn't feel like, something, but it had quite good reviews, especially in The Guardian. So maybe she will, when we actually get to the part that the book is about, it might work better for me. I thought it was too many anecdotes of individual people, and way too long, these first two chapters, just explaining to me how the East Germany came to be. So we'll see about that when I'm further into. And the next book I started is also a buddy read with Heidi from My Reading Life, who actually gifted me this book, The Revolutionary you can't see that, Samuel Adams, The Revolutionary by Stacy Schiff. And this book was published last year. And I said already when I hauled this book in my book haul that I have very, very rudimentary knowledge about US American history. And it's like, Mayflower, slavery, Boston Tea Party, Revolution, these kind of points, but not more than that, and nothing in depth. So when I saw this, I thought, to explain to me how actually the American Revolution, how that came to be, sounded like a good idea. And Stacy Schiff, if you follow my channel, you probably know or remember that I absolutely loved her book about Cleopatra. It was fantastic, one of the best biographies that I've ever read, and certainly the best one about Cleopatra. So this is Samuel Adams, the cousin of the famous, quote unquote, John Adams, and he played quite an important role in the revolution, which is not something that you would expect if you look at the first 40 years of his life, which was not very, he was not good at business. He didn't really want to earn money. He didn't have a passion or a vocation or anything, but then he became this really important behind the curtain figure. And we have the first 6 chapters or something, and I love it. I think it's brilliant the way she makes this time real, the way she makes, and I mean Stacy Schiff, the way she makes Samuel Adams a real person, even though there is not that much material, but she also gives this background, coloring, like these little things. He went to Harvard, and then Stacy Schiff explains to me how the Harvard hierarchy worked, according to what your father did, and that you would get points deducted if you did something that you shouldn't have done, like oversleep or keep your room in disarray. Those things make for me that the time and the people really come alive and mean something. So yeah, so far, excellent pick and fantastic present, Heidi. Thank you very much. And reading it with me is, of course, an extra present. And the next one I just started, another buddy read, also with Kathleen from Kathleen Ann and Adam from Memento Mori. And this is Adam's pick for our, couple of times a year we read something with the three of us. So Harrow by Joy Williams, published in 2021. And she is a writer that I had not read. I didn't know. She's an American writer born in 1944, writing short stories, but also novels. I think this is her 5th novel, and essay collections, but I had never read her. This is a dystopian tale following a teenager, Kristen, who is trying to come to terms with the fact that the world has gone to shit, basically. I'm not going to say more than that because we will have our first check-in only today, so I still have to read a little bit for this first check-in. But it's the type of weird in the first couple of pages that really work for me. So I hope that it will go on working. It's a short little book, 200 pages or something. So those are the books that I finished and that I'm currently reading. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. As always, I'm looking forward to your comments. And yes, I'm back in form. I'm behind on answering the comments. Sorry about that. But I will try my best next week to answer most of them. And I will talk to you all soon in the next one.